Hello and welcome to the DIY migration to Postgres. We're going to show you how to migrate from various databases to EDB Postgres using the migration tools. I'm Simon Anthony. I'm a senior sales engineer for the UK and Ireland, and I'll be taking the presentation today. A little bit about EDB. You may not know of EDB. You've probably all heard of Postgres. But EDB is the major contributor to Postgres. It delivers a number of options for Postgres, the standard edition and an enterprise server with advanced features. Postgres is the only open source based relational database in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. EDB has received 7 years recognition in a row on the Magic Quadrant. You can see they're just edging out of the niche players area, and we're moving forward into the challenges very strongly. This is last year's slide actually, so 2019 will show us moved there. A lot of that is on the basis of our strong position on cloud, and particularly Kubernetes containerization, which is somewhere where the market is heading inexorably toward. As we said, EDB is a major contributor to Postgres. Two of the core team, Bruce Momjian and Dave Page being the architect behind pgadmin and Postgres Enterprise Manager. Bruce Momjian, Mr. Postgres himself, was largely responsible for starting the open source Postgres movement from the original Ingress project way back in the day. Those two are part of the core team of 5 in total. And in fact, that's the maximum number allowed on the board of the core team to prevent any hostile takeovers or commercial takeovers. And we also have a significant number of major contributors Chances are that if you download an Postgres package and install it and run it, an EDB employee has built that package. Migration. Why migration, and why migrate your precious data that's been running quite happily on the system that you have for many, many years? Principally, the first consideration is probably economic. Many commercial systems, Oracle, SQL Server, have extremely onerous licensing and support costs. EDB Postgres is significantly less, possibly 22% of a typical Oracle installation, and requires only a support subscription fee. There's no entry to licensing with upfront license fees. Those reductions we see at 22% of the cost also factored in there the heavy discounting Oracle typically offer on the licensing costs as well. We don't audit you to find more licensing. There's a one fee, it's all in. There's no expensive additions that we'll find as a result of an audit. It also takes away the capital expenditure component on initial outlay, and also on expansions when extra licenses have to be paid. We also free you up in deployment, in that the licenses are core-based and they're migratable to any platform, be it cloud, on-premises, containers, and so forth. It's the same edition of Postgres everywhere. So whatever runs on your one edition of Postgres will run on the same edition on the cloud or elsewhere. A great motivation for moving to Postgres as well is the momentum behind it, that there's a vibrant development community. The release cycle is on a yearly basis for major releases. It's a fully grown up ACID compliant database with a similar provenance from System R as Oracle. It's ANSI SQL compliant, also offers NoSQL with JSON and fast JSON B processing. And a great motivation as well, we see a lot these days, is for geospatial information. Postgres supports PostGIS, which is the premier geospatial open source initiative. It's a very rich programming environment with lots of native data types, foreign data wrappers for integrating with other data sources, and a strong streaming archiving mechanism to create master standby installations. The EDB Postgres platform comes in two flavors, the Advanced Server and Standard Postgres Edition. Advanced Server has many extra features for security, Oracle compatibility, performance, SQL tuning, and so forth. All of the editions include tool suites that's for integration, migration and management, including Postgres Enterprise Manager, the migration toolkits, and foreign data wrappers and adapters. The same Postgres can be deployed virtually anywhere, bare metal, in virtualization, cloud, and more frequently now, containers. The service and support is 24/7 global. We also have a professional services department who are widely experienced experts in Postgres, aiding on migration to Postgres. Training is also available, and also on the website you can see some initial free training to help get you started on a Postgres journey. So what's a migration? What does it comprise? What are we going to migrate, and what would it look like? This chart, according to Gartner, breaks down what a typical effort is involved in migration. Surprisingly, the data and data structures, according to this effort, comprise only 5% of the total. Migrating the logic is 60%, testing 35%, recoding any interface specific areas, OCI, JDBC, management and compliance, and production cutover techniques and planning make up the remainder. What can we identify as migration targets? Well, anything that's of a higher level of abstraction with a object relational model and using tools like Hibernate and Spring is going to be relatively straightforward. Any logic written in PL SQL will migrate more or less directly to Advanced Server. Anything with the application source code available is going to be an aid. Where rack or specific features of rack and clusterware aren't deployed, for example, clustered services, and where specific use of flashback is not part of typical operational procedures. What's more hard to migrate are spatial data, which will, although there are translation tools to migrate Oracle Spatial, SQL Server Spatial directly to PostGIS Spatial, the applications will still have to be rewritten and tested to use the new spatial models. XML data, each database has its own specific way of handling XML, and those data, those code items will have to be rewritten. Specific extensions to .NET, ODBC and JDBC have to be catered for as well, and in fact those kind of extensions are often designed to provide an element of lock-in as well as their feature-oriented proposition. Pro-C, being an Oracle-specific compiler extension, will have to be rewritten as Postgres embedded C. Java stored objects. Oracle is the only database that you can store Java in for execution, which is a rather neat feature, but does open up quite a few security issues at the same time. If, as we mentioned previously, rack and flashback are must-haves, then specific analogs have to be found that will achieve some or all of the functionality that's offered there. We can also include any other Oracle proprietary extensions, external procedure calls, those kind of things, which do have analogs but must be rewritten. What are the tools? Well, one of our consultants, Jessica Sharp in the US, has been in the Postgres world for some time, and many migrations are attempted using Python and the PsychoPG library. And those kind of efforts require a lot of work because there's no standardized way of doing things, and each instance is a custom job. It's a great deal easier to migrate if your target is EDB Postgres Advanced Server. This is a superset of open source Postgres. It's enhanced with various features, Oracle compatibility being one of them, performance monitoring, performance diagnostics and tuning, productivity elements, developer productivity, and enterprise security. In all of the tools, we include high availability, disaster recovery and database management scopes, and all of the tools are available for all the products. There's no additional fees for any use of extra features. Migrating Oracle applications to Advanced Server is greatly facilitated by the fact that it natively understands and executes Oracle PL SQL. There's no translation layer. The compatibility is about 85%. A large number of standard packages are also supported. Elements that aren't supported generally have known workarounds, and some obscure things are also supported. We also support serialized autonomous transactions in PL SQL blocks. Pipelined functions are also supported, so some fairly unusual aspects also there. Compatibility also with the Oracle schemas, data types, indexes, the users, model, roles, partitioning packages, triggers, stored procedures, functions, and utilities. We can also integrate with Oracle environments through heterogeneous replication with the tools, or indeed direct database links, ACI links to the database. The benefits of this all over are that the migration path is greatly eased, given that you don't have to move all of the Oracle PL SQL over to PL PG SQL overnight. So you can continue to coexist for longer. You can reduce the learning curve for any DBAs or developers that are transitioning over to the Postgres way of doing things, and still capitalize on your skill set base for PL SQL coding. In addition, there are Oracle compatible tools, so a SQL Plus compatible editor, so you can carry on running SQL Plus scripts that you may have for automating or running various aspects of the business. And also EDB Loader is a completely compatible SQL loader tool for loading data, the granddaddy of data loading. How do we get started with a migration? The first port of call is to look at the migration portal. This is at the URL given there. And how do we do this? We first of all download a DDL extractor, which is from the website there. Set up a project to do the schema that you're going to migrate. You upload the DDL you've extracted from the schema, and you run the migration portal against it. That will generate a report showing the results of the migration. You can interactively assess that and download the SQL script, and that will create code ready to run on advanced server. Any things that weren't able to be migrated for whatever reason, a reason will be given in the report, and that code can obviously be then addressed, modified as appropriate, put under source code control, and used as part of a migration. Moving on, we then have the migration toolkit. Information about this can be found at the URL given there, but basically this toolkit is a downloadable component from the standard Linux repositories that are available on an EDB subscription or trial. The migration toolkit is a command line tool, and it's a comprehensive solution for migration. You can see from the diagram there, it migrates from either Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, Sybase, or another source Postgres database. There are various options for configuring the tool and configuring the performance, including the thread count, and a lot of consultants doing a migration like to perform the migration in the sequence that's given there to ease the migration effort. So tables first, have all the tables migrated, then migrate the data, enable indexes and constraints, and then test the logic. Speaking of Oracle specifically, the migration toolkit there is shown running against, say, the HR schema. That's the invocation. The connection from the source Oracle database to the target advanced server database can either with JDBC or OCI for improved performance if there's a large number of objects and data to be migrated. And it migrates a comprehensive overall body of objects and data, views, users, roles, schemas, partitions, database links, packages, triggers, procedures, and functions. In running a migration, typically, in the vast majority of cases, the migration is done in one shot. So the migration to the Postgres data, the advanced server Postgres database, for example, a weekend is picked on which to perform this, and the data is migrated. The production system shut down, the data, the schema and data objects migrated over. In the case where it's desired to have, say, a parallel run, then the migration is performed earlier, and the advanced server instance is kept in synchronization with the Oracle or SQL Server database by a replication server, which has been set up to asynchronously replicate any data changes on the source database between the time that the migration was originally performed and the actual cutover date. Well, which tool to use and when to use it? As we've already mentioned, the migration is greatly facilitated by using Advanced Server for Oracle migrations, where native support for Oracle data types, packages, and PL SQL is already built in. And we also have a great deal of experience in performing these kind of migrations with professional services over 15 years. So there's a large body of able assistance there. For early assessments of schemas, as we've said, we can use the migration portal to try out a trial migration in a simple fashion that requires no setup of test environments. But where we are intending to establish a pilot migration or proofs of concepts rather, we use the migration toolkit to perform an in-depth migration using test databases and repeating an iterative process to refine the actual migration and correct any objects that can't be migrated on a first pass basis. Some advice from the field and the experiences of doing migrations. In migration planner and discovery, First of all, get familiarity with the toolkit, gain some experience by migrating some easy schemas first using the portal. For pilots, trials, and proofs of concept, use the migration toolkit and use that in a stepwise fashion to refine your migration recipe. The SQL that you extract using and generate using the migration toolkit, split it up into logical components, put it under source control, and use that to move forward with the migration effort. Script and script and script as much of the whole process as you can. And don't forget that migration is a team effort, from developers to DBAs, from infrastructure for security. It's much more helpful if everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet. And the old maxim, test, test, and then test again, is never true. When do we actually perform the cutover? Well, every migration, every schema, every application is different. Do at least one dry run. Pause the data replication, back up the database. In many cases, if it's a large schema or large schema and also large amount of data, then it might be more prudent to migrate first the schema and the objects, refine that process until there are no errors, and then repeat the process using the data to back up, to migrate as well, because obviously moving large amounts of data significantly takes up more time on a migration. And again, apply indexes and constraints after the data has been migrated, because this is typically the method in which this is done, and is much faster rather than having more constraints being checked as the data is loaded. Test the database, the business logic with the normal testing and regression testing procedures that you have, and test also the connections because different drivers will be used and different features will be used in different applications. If you have any questions on the migration or would like more in-depth answers, then I'd like to refer to Stuart Moss at enterprisedb.com, who will be fielding the answers for you. We did have a couple of questions earlier. One was about comparable transaction isolation between PostgreSQL and Oracle. Well, broadly, they're very similar. They both follow the ANSI ISO SQL standard for transaction isolation. In Oracle, only read committed and serializable are explicitly offered. In Postgres, read uncommitted, read committed, repeatable read, and serializable can be selected. Read uncommitted is actually equivalent to read committed. Read uncommitted is implied in Oracle, and so all reads are consistent and selects non-blocking. And in Postgres, read uncommitted is treated as read committed. So in both cases, read committed, which is default in Postgres as well, the transaction can only see rows committed before it began. This is exactly the same behavior as in Oracle. And the serializable behavior is strongly defined in the ANSI ISO standards, and the behavior is exactly the same. The other question was, does the portal provide a REST API? Not at the moment. I believe we are working on this. It's a very good question. A lot of the features that we do offer do have REST APIs, but the portal I don't think has one at this present point in time. So thank you very much for listening into the webinar, and please do get in touch if you have any questions further on migration.